The Aztec Empire, one of the most powerful and enigmatic civilizations of pre-Columbian America, flourished in what is now modern-day Mexico. This empire, with its intricate social structures, formidable warriors, and stunning architectural achievements, was deeply rooted in religious beliefs. This deity represented renewal, fertility, and the agricultural cycle, embodying the idea that life and death were inextricably linked. Xipe Totec was often depicted wearing the flayed skin of a sacrificed victim, symbolizing the shedding of the old to make way for the new. His association with the cycles of nature and the land made him one of the most revered gods of the Aztec pantheon, especially during the festival of Tlacaxipehualiztli. It represented the constant cycle of life and death, with death being seen not as an end, but as a necessary step towards transformation and renewal. As the festival progressed, the sacrificial victims, dressed in the skin of the god, were paraded through the streets, embodying the idea of rebirth. This practice, while horrifying by modern standards, was an essential component of Aztec spirituality and their view of the world, and their deep connection to the forces of nature and the divine. In the end, Xipe Totec's festival was not just about sacrifice, but about honoring the god's power to transform and renew. It was celebrated annually, primarily in the spring, and marked the beginning of the agricultural season, aligning with the sowing of maize, one of the Aztec staple crops. The festival was a time of intense spiritual renewal, not just for the people, but for the land itself. Through this ritual, the Aztecs believed they could offer thanks to the gods for the harvest and ensure the continuation of fertility and prosperity in the coming year. An act that was as much about the physical world as it was about the spiritual realm. The central feature of the Tlacaxipehualiztli festival was the sacrifice of the victim, who was led to the pyramid dedicated to Xipe Totec. The victim, chosen for their perceived spiritual significance, was brought to the top of the pyramid, where they were restrained by priests. These priests, wearing ornate costumes that symbolized their connection to the divine, would perform a ritual dance. To the Aztecs, the act of shedding skin was symbolic of the renewal of life. In their worldview, the earth, like humans, underwent cycles of birth, death, and rebirth. It served to reaffirm the power of the emperor and the religious elite, while also reaffirming the central role of the gods in the Aztec worldview. The prisoners who were sacrificed were typically individuals from rival tribes or neighboring peoples whom the Aztecs had conquered. This public display of power was a reminder to the empire's subjects of the supremacy of the Aztec military and religious forces. The Spanish Catholic missionaries sought to convert the Aztec people to Christianity and suppress their traditional spiritual practices. The remnants of their great temples, including the Templo Mayor, provide valuable insights into the grandeur of Aztec society and its spiritual beliefs. Through the ritual of human sacrifice, the Aztecs believed they were ensuring the fertility of the land, the survival of their empire, and the continuation of life itself. Today, while the practices of the Aztec people are seen through the lens of history and cultural study, the legacy of these ancient rituals continues to offer a powerful reminder of the complexities of human belief, sacrifice, and spirituality. The festival of Tlacaxipehualiztli serves as a testament to the Aztecs' belief in the cyclical nature of life, death, and renewal. Their intense rituals and sacrifices, while brutal by modern standards, were seen as necessary acts to ensure the survival and prosperity of their people. The once glorious ceremonies of Xipe Totec were relegated to history, leaving only traces of their existence in the form of archaeological evidence and accounts from Spanish chroniclers. The sacrifices were meant to inspire awe and fear, solidifying the idea that the gods' favor was essential to the survival and prosperity of the empire. By performing these grand ceremonies, the priests were able to demonstrate the connection between the divine and earthly realms, The arrival of the Spanish, led by Hernan Cortes in the early 16th century, marked the beginning of the end for the Aztec religious practices. The Spanish, seeing the practices as barbaric and contrary to Christian beliefs, sought to eliminate the indigenous religious ceremonies. The decline of the Aztec religious practices. The people of the empire participated not just as spectators, but as integral parts of the ritual, ensuring that the energy of the sacrifice flowed through the entire community. The Aztecs saw their gods as powerful forces that ensured this cycle continued. By offering the life of a captive, they believed they were honoring Xipe Totec's power to ensure the fertility of the land and the success of the harvest. The dance was not just for spiritual connection, but to build the energy of the ritual, heightening the sacredness of the moment. It was a direct channel between the human and the divine, allowing the priests to embody the god's power. The skin was seen as an instrument of transformation. Just as the victim was transformed by death, so too were the priests transformed by the god's power. The aftermath and cultural impact. This pyramid, also known as the Templo Mayor, was the heart of the Aztec city and stood as a symbol of the power of the gods. The ritual was steeped in symbolism and involved multiple activities, from prayers to the preparation of sacrifices. A large number of prisoners of war captured during Aztec military campaigns were brought into the city, but the ritual did not stop there. The flaying of the victim, where the skin was meticulously removed, symbolized the god's power over life and death. The flayed skin was then worn by priests who danced around the altar, representing the god's rejuvenating power. This was the ultimate expression of Rebirth. Xipe Totec, who is reborn each year after shedding his skin, was honored by the shedding of the victim's skin. The symbolism behind the sacrifice. These captives were not considered just prisoners, but were seen as representatives of the forces that the gods had conquered. They were treated as sacred beings who would give their lives in honor of the gods. But at the core of the event was the flaying ceremony, a practice that has long intrigued historians. This display was not meant to humiliate the prisoners, but rather to elevate them to the status of sacred offerings. The ritualistic practice was seen as a high honor for the victims, as they were believed to be selected by the gods themselves for their role in ensuring the prosperity of the Aztec people. The prisoners were prepared for their sacrifice with prayers, incense, and offerings that emphasized the purity and sanctity of the act that would follow. The flaying ceremony. And researchers, both for its symbolism and its shocking brutality. The preparation for sacrifice. The Aztec people, through their ceremonies and rituals, believed they were ensuring the survival of their civilization by paying homage to the gods who shaped their world. The flaying was not just an act of worship, but also a powerful reminder of the delicate balance between life and death in the Aztec worldview. However, the legacy of Xipe Totec and the Tlacaxipehualiztli festival continues to captivate historians and scholars, shedding light on the complex and often misunderstood rituals of the ancient Aztec world. Human sacrifice, often criticized by outsiders, was an integral part of their religious practices, and the Aztecs believed it was essential for maintaining cosmic order. The Aztecs worshipped a pantheon of gods, each of whom governed a specific aspect of life. The sacrifice was symbolic of Xipe Totec's power to bring about renewal and rebirth, as the flaying of the victim's skin was believed to symbolize the god's gift of fertility and new life to the land. The Aztecs believed that this act of sacrifice and renewal was necessary to honor Xipe Totec's power and to ensure the survival of the people and the success of the harvest. Tlacaxipehualiztli, which lasted several days, was a spectacle of intense rituals, dances, and offerings to the god. It marked the beginning of the planting season and was believed to ensure the fertility of the crops. At the core of Aztec religion was the belief that the gods demanded constant appeasement through rituals, ceremonies, and sacrifices to maintain the balance of the world. Among these gods, Xipe Totec, known as Our Lord the Flayed One, held a particularly significant role. Celebrated annually during the spring, this festival was one of the most important in the Aztec calendar and involved the ritual of flaying a sacrificial victim, typically a prisoner of war. The sacrificial victims were led to the temple where they were ceremoniously flayed, and their skins were often worn by the priests, who would dance and perform rituals in the freshly shed skin, further reinforcing the idea of rebirth. Beyond the physical act of sacrifice, the festival also held deep symbolic meaning for the Aztec people. Despite the violence associated with the flaying rituals, the festival also celebrated the vitality and strength of the Aztec people, symbolizing their belief in the cyclical nature of life. Over time, as the Aztec civilization faced external pressures and the influence of European colonization grew, these ritualistic practices began to wane. Today, the practices of the Aztec people, especially those involving human sacrifice, are seen as a testament to their intricate belief systems, the festival and its practices. The festival of Tlacaxipehualiztli, dedicated to Xipe Totec, was an incredibly significant event in Aztec culture. Tlacaxipehualiztli, which was celebrated with exuberance, took place in the sacred spaces of Tenochtitlan, the heart of the Aztec Empire. The Aztec priests, the religious elite responsible for carrying out the sacrifices, would prepare for the festival weeks in advance. The prisoners chosen for the festival were often dressed in fine clothing and paraded before the public. On the day of the festival, the atmosphere in Tenochtitlan was one of intense anticipation. The sacrificial ceremony was a carefully choreographed event. Once the dance concluded, the sacrificial priest would cut the chest of the victim open, removing the still beating heart, which was then presented to the gods as the most precious of offerings. The ritual of flaying was not a random act of violence, but one deeply embedded in Aztec cosmology and spirituality. The skin itself had immense spiritual significance. When priests wore the freshly flayed skin, it was more than just a representation of the god. The festival was not only a religious event but also a key part of the social structure of the Aztec Empire. The festival also had significant political overtones. However, as time went on and European influence began to encroach upon the Americas, these rituals, particularly the human sacrifices, would eventually be suppressed. With the fall of Tenochtitlan in 1521 and the subsequent colonization by the Spanish, the Tlacaxipehualiztli festival and the human sacrifice rituals were officially abolished. Despite this, the legacy of the Aztec civilization and its complex religious rituals continues to intrigue historians and archaeologists today. The Tlacaxipehualiztli festival, dedicated to Xipe Totec, was more than just a religious ceremony. It was a symbol of the Aztecs' deep connection to the forces of nature, the gods, and the cosmos.